Welcome back everyone. I hope the first video has helped all of you to really understand Simmel's basic conception of society and how he analyzes things. Now from there we will proceed to the next stage of really understanding his conceptions and theories such as formal interactions or associations, social types, and also the sociology of senses. Now these things are much valid if you see throughout your life. If you think and reflect, you will see where Simmel got his ideas from. Without further ado, let us jump into his first understanding of society. The formal dimensions of interaction, known as social geometry, is basically, from this theory, he is trying to prove how there is a common pattern in the most simple interaction, primarily on numbers and distance. In other words, there is a logic behind the social groupings or interactions in general. Just as a background, at this point in time in history, people tend to relate much more towards science, towards mathematics, believing that it is the most important factor in the world, and it is the most reliable one, and so this is how he relates it. Alright, so first of all, let's start with numbers. So the amount of people that are involved in an interaction makes a sociological difference. He states that the interaction between different amount of people would have a different effect. He divided this concept under two bases. Number one, dyads, and the other one is triads or triads. Dyads is the interaction between two people, right? This is also known as the most intense form of association. There is no independent group beyond the dyad themselves. Hence, when they disperse, the interaction disperses. Therefore, it also proves that each dyad retains high individuality with no sense of belonging, unlike the triads that I will be explaining later on. Now, moving on to the triads. Triads is the foundation of all complexities, such as competitions, alliance, and mediation in any groupings in the world, or any groupings that you can see around you, such as politics. You see there are different parties, and so one can join the other, or you can see this from friend groups, right? If there are three people, obviously the third person will be the key attraction point for the rest two. Well, one, it can, as I have told you, it can take advantage by gaining support of the other party to dominate over the other and eventually attain monopoly, divide and rule strategy. And this also represents the later stages of society. In other words, it is necessary to dominate over individuals if social structures are to be created. For example, parents and children. There is two parents, and if there's one kid, the two parents can dominate and create a norm where the kid is unable to oppose because the second parent is following the other, and hence they create a solid form of rule. Or vice versa. For example, since the kid is a third party, the kid can choose to ally with one of the parents in order to outvote the other one. 2 against 1, obviously. That's the basic understanding of majority versus minority, which is why in geography or when you're studying ethnography, there will always be the theory that the majority tends to suppress the minority. Now, the formation of the triad in general would eventually isolate the party from the dyad spectrum, and eventually forming the objective culture against the individual creativity. So what do I really mean by objective culture and creative individuality? We should refer back to the dialectical thinking, where there is always a force that forces us to obey to our cultures or our political worldviews or our religion. But at the same time, there is individual creativity that stops us and challenges things and with hopes of obviously challenging and changing the trend, such as fashion, right? But nonetheless, just to put it simply, he's basically using this to prove that no matter how big the objective culture is or how big the world is, it cannot be full, it cannot be complete without your individual creativity. Like the triad. The triad will break down if there is no you, and it will become dyads. And the dyads will eventually come into conflict and break down as well. So for triads to exist, there must be a third party, no matter how small it is. Now we are moving to distance and how it affects or creates social interactions. So the relation of distance would determine the perception of an insider or an outsider between people and other people or people and things. This is very relatable to his philosophy of money and the stranger, to which I will be talking later on in the next video. Nonetheless, I will be explaining the philosophy of money and the stranger in the most general understanding. So, money, the philosophy of money, according to Simmel, the value of an object is determined by the distance between the actor and the former. Think about it this way. In the 1600s, how can nutmeg from Indonesia be very expensive when they're sold in the UK? It is simply because it's very difficult to attain that, and the shipping costs so much, which is precisely why the distance determines the value of it. If if you can just pick it out of your garden, it would be much cheaper. Well, I hope you understand this basic concept of the philosophy of money. Now we will be moving on to his second point, called the stranger. Now the stranger is a very interesting understanding by Simmel. Unlike the traveler who comes today and leaves tomorrow, the stranger is someone who comes today and stays tomorrow. So think of the people in a group, for example. If you are too close, then you are no longer considered as a stranger. And yet if you are too far, then you are clearly, a group of people won't know who you are. And so that's the basic concept. Basically, Simmel states that strangers only seek limited acceptance but maintain their degree of otherness. The locals therefore have a negative feeling of hostility, but at the same time they see positiveness in a sense that they have something to learn from the stranger, or the stranger is far more objective than the locals in that sense. But the most interesting part about the stranger is that it proves that the strangeness of the stranger could be the foundation of social interaction. Imagine a trader who comes today and stays today. Now people go to the trader simply because they know that the trader has things to offer them that the natives or the locals don't have. So it's just the strangeness that makes them very significant, not the class, not the gender, nor the status, sort of in larger picture. Other than the strangeness and having the power of objectivity as their main attraction, the stranger also has more freedom compared to the locals because they have far more authority where people come to them for help or for trust matters. And yet with that authority, unlike the locals, they have no commitment to anything. So imagine traders coming in, and when there is a riot in the city, they can just leave anytime they want. Well, that's it for the formal forms of interaction or association. There are indeed other forms, but I won't go through them thoroughly, simply because those distance and numbers are the most important towards Simmel's work. And basically another two that is worth mentioning is certainly time and speed. Time focuses on efficiency, which means it can shape the interaction type. The way people interact can be affected by time. Basically, if time is limited, there will be pressures of people interacting towards each other in a very fast pace, which means less quality, more quantity sort of thing. And speed is another form of time that it enables the blasé attitude, the notorious blasé attitude to be formed, to which I will be explaining it to all of you later on. Well, for other forms of associations, I will be making another video specifically for that because it's quite long. That takes into account of more of the informal sort of associations happening. So we just covered the formal, and now in the next video, we will be covering the informal ones. Alright, without further ado, now we will move on to the sociology of senses. These are basically micro examples made by Simmel to really emphasize how even natural understanding of the body can influence how interactions are made and how interactions grow. Alright, let's start with the eyes. Eyes is very significant according to Simmel because it helps to show your nature, who you are, your emotions and personality, which is exactly why when people are shy, they don't want to look at you in the eye, so that others or you are unable to read them and eventually have limited understanding of them and their true nature. In other words, eyes help people to get to know each other well, or it also creates a division of friendships, of enemies, or different types of people. Simmel even quotes that the face is the symbol of everything that an individual has brought with him or her as the prerequisite of their lives. When digging deeper to Simmel's work, the eyes does not merely mirror or show other people's emotions. It's not as simple as that. It shows another sort of significance. One being that there is a mutual relationships between people, and that through it, meanings are established, and with meanings, people can divide one another, people can categorize one another, which is exactly why, if we look at racism in the past, people, when they see a black person, they simply believe that, oh yeah, these people are less intelligent than the white ones. Basically, Simmel wants us to really understand that the basic foundation of sociology or any culture or cultural organization such as politics or economics comes from eyesight. Because through eyesight can divisions be created, and with divisions, meanings are imposed. Alright, moving on to another type of senses, hearing or ears. So unlike eyes that are far more judgmental, ears are very individualistic because it is pure and passive. It is referring to what the individual knows, which is why oftentimes in history people say those who listen are much more wiser than those who speak, because listening is hearing other people's contradictions and secrets, is giving you more knowledge rather than being judgmental, right? Alright, but when we look at the more social aspects, hearing actually helps to unite people in understanding moods. In other words, when you come to a concert, you come simply because there is a commonality between all of you individuals to listen to the same song. So it creates unity in people. And furthermore, workers are able to exist as a foundation because of the characteristics of attending mass meetings to hear what the boss must say or instructions that they give. Alright, you see, it's fairly simple. And smell is even simpler than that. Smell, or, using your nose, determines how people are perceived according to their class. How our own objective emotions may influence the way we view reality. For example, bad-smelling people would normally be associated with someone poor or uneducated. Hence, like eyes, it is very judgmental, and it also creates divisions. People will be separated based on likes and dislikes. However, the main difference between eyes and nose is that eyes is being judgmental from a very objective manner, something that you can't control. from cultures, for example. Rather, smell also comes from cultures, but it comes, all in all, it's from you as an individual. It's very subjective. Alright, hopefully you got the understanding of sociology of senses. Now we will be moving to social types. This category, this section, is very different. Well, they are associated, but different from social forms of interactions. How so? I will be explaining to you, and one example of social types are strangers that I've explained before. So, as a foundation, social types are basically forms of association involving people with typical characteristics. A gallery of social types is used to complement the inventory of social forms. For example, how a specific other affects the relationship between people. So these are like very special cases that affects the norm, in other words. The stranger is a very specific case, right? These people are, they're just not part of the norm. They're considered to be the other. So there are different types of social types. 1, stranger. 2, adventurer. 3, the poor. Now, I will be giving you an example and an explanation on the poor rather than adventurer, because adventurer is very difficult to explain. So, as long as you get 2 types of social types, you will be safe in an exam. Alright, so the poor is a very interesting case as well, simply because the poor determines, shows a special relationship between those of higher economic status or any kind of aspects, higher political status or higher social status, in comparison to those lower. So what Simmel is saying here is that when someone is lower, he has the right of receiving something, and those with higher standards or higher status has also the right to help, to give, kind of thing. So really, it is these rights and obligations by an objective culture that creates the poor. In other words, poor does not simply come as like natural, it's a very social thing, right? So Simmel also explains that it is necessary for the rich to give money to the poor, simply because those out there who do not have house, homeless people, beggars, is a very dangerous aspect of society. If they are not contained by money, they will become dangerous to society. When looking at Simmel's conclusion that the poor is dangerous, he can come to this understanding because people no longer give money to the poor out of sincerity or out of pittiness. Rather, they give money to them due to impersonal, objective desires, and it has become more bureaucratic. We can see this in Africa. People just drop money, not really caring about the individuals, despite them really knowing that the money goes to the corrupt government. And so Simmel sees this as a very bureaucratic thing, rather than acting upon mercy or pittiness. However, it is important to note that when Simmel explains poor, it is not necessarily poor not having money. It is rather there will always be someone having more money than you, and they see you as poor because they have much more money. So again, it does not relate to poverty. It can even exist in the rich strata. When a rich man sees someone richer, he will immediately believe himself and seen as a poorer man compared to the rest. Which is why disparities will always happen. There is no such thing as perfect, utopian, everyone being equal. Because in a sense, there is already that kind of right for someone to receive aid and someone to give aid. Since we are coming to an end, basically in this PowerPoint, you can see all the summaries just in bigger picture so that you will remember his key points rather than the details. Always start from the key points, then going to the details so you really understand what Simmel is pointing at or hinting at. But nonetheless, since this is the end of the video, thank you very much for listening. Hopefully it has been a very worthwhile video to listen to and to learn more about Georg Simmel. So if you do have any questions, please write it in the comment box and hopefully I will be able to answer them. Now, for the next video, we will be focusing on culture and his ideology on society, such as the tragedy of culture, individualization, the problems of money economy, and other modernity aspects of it. And obviously, as good social thinkers, we should also realize that there are criticisms against his work, and that we will discuss as well. Well, for those who have extra time or willing to learn more about informal forms of sociation, please watch the other video for more info. And obviously, don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and perhaps share it with other people. And remember, never stop learning. Everything is achievable as long as you have the willingness to learn. Thank you.